sponsoring the event today. I started at Bank about 2 months ago to head up their UX and design function. Them sponsoring this event, them hiring a UX team that has grown about 5 times since I started, is a testament to the fact that the company, right from senior management, right down to everyone in product, is fully bought into the value of UX. So for the first time in a career that's been largely with startups and scale-ups, I'm not in the business of selling the value of UX. It's such a relief. I'd recommend it. You should try it. It's great to come in and have problems and challenges around scaling up UX research and design functions. One of the key challenges we face at Bank is the specialization of UX research and design as two separate but very closely linked functions. And that's, in many ways, what this talk is about today. If research explores the landscape of problems, and as designers, we look at the solution landscape. How do we make that transition seamless? Some of the speakers earlier today have talked about the synthesizing of data, of the sharing of data, of research data, both qualitative and quantitative. That's what we'll talk about today. I started my career at Just Eat when it was a really small 30-person organization, all crammed into a little office in Edgware Road. By the time I left, 4 years later, the organization had IPO'd. When I started out, I was called a digital designer in a studio that did everything from marketing to website design, and we were kind of the one-size-fits-all design language within the company. That was 10 years ago. As UX research and UX design maturity within organizations grows, we are faced with new types of challenges. And even if you're not in one of those organizations yet, you will be soon. Because the value of UX is undeniable. I mean, everyone here will not disagree with me on that. But before we talk about that journey, I'd like to talk about another one. Probably the most epic journey we as a human race have ever taken. The journey into space. We solved a lot of really complex problems in the process of getting there. Whether it was a spaceship design, how do we actually put humans in space, how do they survive zero gravity, confined spaces, complex problems, interesting, complex problems. But the one that I want to talk about is the problem of writing things in space. They need to keep records. They need to write down and keep track of all the little things that happen when they're on that spacecraft floating about in space. Some of you here might have heard about the legendary story. NASA's space pen. $1 million spent on R&D. 2 years of testing, research gone into building it. The Soviet solution? A pencil. It's a great anecdote. It's one of those things that gets floated around in forwards, and people use it as a shorthand for bureaucracy that's wasteful, for bureaucracy that over-engineers solutions. However interesting that story is, it's actually inaccurate. It's not true. In fact, both the USA and Russia used pencils. For up to about 1969, they both used pencils. They had slightly different takes on what kind of pencils they used, but they were both pencils. The American solution, John Glenn, the astronaut in 1962, used that one when he was on his space voyage. It clipped onto his leg, and it worked very much like a mechanical pencil, the one that you use with your moleskin. The Russian solution was similar, but it was a clay pencil with a little bit of paper on top that you peeled back, and you could use it quite like a crayon, similar to that. They both posed problems. They weren't perfect solutions by any stretch of the imagination. The little graphite bits from mechanical pencils got all over the place. Now, in a zero-gravity, confined space, expensive spaceship, that poses a problem. That poses a serious problem. Not to mention that graphite and lead are highly flammable. The same held true for the Russian solution. That was still using lead and graphite. It was still highly flammable. And more importantly, it led to waste. That little bit of paper that kept everything in place was waste in a very, very tight space. So our seemingly over-engineered space pen really took into account all of those problems. If you took a step back and thought about the problem that the pencil solves, it's quite simple. It says a ballpoint pen doesn't work in space because the ink doesn't flow that way. It just doesn't. And so a pencil is your obvious solution. It's the one staring you right in the face. And you're like, let's jump, let's go with that, because that makes sense. But actually, if you start questioning what the problem really is, if you start questioning what the needs of the astronaut really are, they want to be safe. I mean, they're going to be in uncharted territories, quite literally. They're going to be in a small space. They're going to be with very, very expensive equipment. Safety, fire hazards, these are risks they cannot afford to take. So now if you reframe the problem just a little bit, and you say it's not about just being able to write, but it's also about being able to write with implements that are fit for purpose, being able to keep records in a way that serves the need of the astronauts, then you think of the problem very differently. That's what this guy did. That's Paul Fisher, the inventor of the space pen. It wasn't NASA, it was this guy. He's a private American entrepreneur who has a company that's still alive today. In 2018, they still sell the NASA space pen with the marketing tagline, the pen that went to the moon and back. He spent time understanding what the astronauts needed. He tested his solution, this nitrogen cylinder that allowed you to write at any angle. The ink he used could survive any temperature, could survive any pressure. And more importantly, everything was self-contained in one container. So there was no chance of spillage, of waste. And he sold those pens, not just to America. No, he sold those pens to Russia as well. So he had a good business model. He understood the needs of the users, of his astronauts, and he gave them a solution that was fit for purpose. What do we learn from that? We learned that sometimes it's easy to jump to solutions. It's easy to stare an obvious solution in the face and say, that has to be the right answers. Because human beings, we're hardwired to solve problems, right? But problems make us uncomfortable. They make us question things. They raise concerns. They lay bare all of the assumptions we make. And they're uncertain. So we jump to solutioning. We are hardwired to do it. In many ways, it works for us, because solutions are a shorthand for communications. Like you might want something savory and salty, but you're not going to say that. You're going to say, let's go to McDonald's. And that's wherein lies the fallacy. Problems require us to get comfortable with uncertainty. They require us to be okay with not knowing the answers. Solutions mean that problems are done. We can now focus on this paradise land where everything is sorted out, and all we need to do is make the solution happen. Solutions as a unit of discussion in product development is problematic. It's very problematic, because if you talk in solutions, then everyone that you involve in that conversation has to reverse engineer the problem. How many people here have been in product meetings where people look at a feature design, a solution to a problem that everyone thinks they understand, but actually look at very, very differently? It could be your sprint planning meeting. It could be your retro, where the engineers look at you and go, well, what problem are we solving in the first place? I thought we were doing this. Decision-making becomes infinitely harder when you use solutions as a unit of discussion. Because now, you need to constantly bring everyone on board with every little change you make. If you use problems instead, you're getting buy-in for achieving a goal, for solving a problem, not for implementing a solution. So even if along the way you discover, through iteration, through further research, that the problem isn't what you originally thought it was, you don't need to get buy-in all over again, because everyone's everyone's on the same page already. They agree with wanting to solve this problem. Problems make us uncomfortable. So that brings us to this idea, this idea that there are two areas where UX operates. The problem waters, this murky, uncertain, choppy space where things are all up in the air, where anything is possible and everything is uncertain. And then there's solution land, this beautiful tropical paradise, where you have ideas, where you explore things, where everyone has a voice. And it's comfortable to stay in solution land. It's comfortable to almost jump into solution land. But problem waters, that's where you find buried treasure. So let's start by looking how you might navigate. Ooh. Wrong button. How you might navigate problem waters. If I had only 1 hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. I'm going to credit it to Einstein. Haven't found enough corroborating evidence to say it definitely was him. It's the internet. We're used to this. We're used to this idea of doing research, finding insight, and finding a problem that we want to validate. We have this big open solution space, we narrow it down, and we define a problem we want to, a solution we'd like to validate. And then we execute on it. This was the old world. We've learned that we need to validate solutions. You need to take them out, test them with users, do feasibility checks with tech teams, with development teams. But we don't provide that level of rigorous questioning to problems themselves. We don't go back and iterate on problems. We don't go back and try and validate whether we're even solving a problem that's worth solving. Because when you do, that nice beautifully aligned double diamond starts to get convoluted. It starts to get messed up. It starts to look differently. Because now you need to change the very point you started at. You need to change the very solution you thought was perfect for that problem that really wasn't a problem. And it breaks us. It breaks us because we're used to solutions. We like solutions. So how do you spend more time in problem waters? How do you make the most of it? At Receive Bank, we work with mission-oriented teams. And this is a concept that a lot of people today have spoken about. As we grow in size and we scale up, it becomes imperative to create autonomous delivery teams that are cross-functional, that have a UX researcher, a UX designer, product development, or product owners, and development teams, all embedded, working together to try and solve problems. So at Receive Bank, we have a concept of a mission. This is an overarching goal, something we'd like to accomplish. That mission maps to user needs. So a mission for us at Receive Bank, which is a company that helps accountants and small and medium businesses take away the mundane, boring tasks of bookkeeping, of capturing transactions, of writing things down in the old-fashioned way. We hate Excel sheets. We don't believe that you need to type things out. We want to automate that for you. We want productivity for your business so you can focus on what matters. So if that effortless bookkeeping, if that's our mission, then what are the needs that users have to make that possible? What are the outcomes as a business that we'd like to see? So an example might be if our mission is effortless bookkeeping, we might look at user needs around capturing of data. How do you make that effortless? How do you save them time? How do you save them money? What are the outcomes you want? How will you track this? Will you look just at the amount of time they spent doing the tasks that they were doing in the past? Can you simplify that? Can you make it more accessible, more possible in lesser effort? And then you start to break down the problem. Once you've validated that there is a need for a problem, and you use that, you use your version of that. What is the thing your business wants to accomplish? What are the outcomes that make sure that you're aligned with that mission? And ultimately, and most importantly, what are the needs that you can fulfill? What are the problems you can solve for your users? That bring you closer. That bring you closer to there, and then ultimately there. So you've justified that there is a need for a solution. So this problem is big enough. This problem is valid enough. You can move on now. Now is the fun part. Now, UX researchers at this point are taking their little scout trips. They're going out into these problem waters, these choppy, uncertain lands. And they're asking the hard questions, the who, the what, the where, and the why. Who is this users? We've talked today about jobs to be done and personas. You need to cluster your users. You need to group them in ways that make sense for your business. And there isn't a single framework that's right or wrong. It's making sure that you have a deep understanding of the types of users that use your product, the types of users for whom you can solve problems. What is the need? What is this problem you're solving? Is it an emotional problem? Is it that they're scared of these tasks that they have to do? Is it that fear of a pile of receipts that they've hidden under their bed because they do not know how they're going to input them into an Excel sheet? Is it a fear of Excel sheets? What is it? What is the fear? Is it emotional? Is it just a task-related fear? And where does it happen? Where is this problem the most apparent? And finally, and probably most importantly, the why. Now, at whatever stage of your growth cycle you are, you will have some data. And it'll be tempting to draw conclusions from that data. It'll be tempting to jump to a conclusion about why this problem is important. So in this example, you can see that the temperatures over the last 150 years have gone up, whereas the number of pirates have gone down. Now, you might look at that and say that because the temperatures have gone up, the number of pirates have gone down. That's almost certainly not true. It might have something to do with Industrial Revolution. It might have something to do with the opening of borders. But you could draw that conclusion. You'd be wrong, but you could draw that conclusion. And that's where some of the things we've heard today apply. You can be fooled by data very easily. So here's an idea. Let's be data informed. Let's use our data to inform us, but not to lead us. We've still got our money shot. We've still got the users. We can ask them questions. We can spend time with them to peel things away. So if you take a problem, at the very heart of it, it's just like an onion. With every why you ask against that problem, you peel back another layer. You deconstruct it further till what's left has to be true. Because it's all you know. It may not be very much. It may be very, very little. But that's okay because you've peeled it back. You've gotten rid of all your assumptions, of all these uncertainties that plague you in problem waters. And you're ready now, because now you know the who, you know the what, you know the why, you know the where. You know why this problem is important, and you know why it's important for you as a business to solve it. So what is the principle here? The principle is, before you leave problem waters, visualize your data. Make it accessible. Synthesize it. Because insight is only as valuable as the number of people who can access it. As UX researchers, we're not in the business of just reporting facts. We want to share insight. So visualize your data, synthesize it, and revise it. Make sure you're iterating on problems just as you would iterate on solutions. And chart a course. So in that moment where a UX researcher passes on this piece of work to a design team, to a development team, they have enough context to work with. And that brings us to more stable land, solution land. In solution land, things should be similar. So we talked earlier about a mission having user needs, and a business outcome. In solution land, we talk about goals. We talk about the goals that the business want to accomplish. Now we're no longer in uncertain land. We're trying to close the gaps in our knowledge. We have a goal. We have something we want to accomplish as a team, as a larger organization. We want to make bookkeeping effortless, and that hasn't changed. The term might have, but that hasn't changed. But the signals have. Those user needs are now signals. They're signals that tell us that what we're doing is right. If we fulfill those needs, and we will know through looking at the product that we have, and then we have the metrics. These are our business outcomes. These are the things that tell us that the product is successful, that it's doing what it was intending to do. And that helps us to start with our team. And this is important. So you've defined the problem. You understand how that maps to the larger objective, to the larger mission. Get together to draw a hypothesis, and do this collectively. There's a lot of places where designers would sit in a silo, in a little corner somewhere on their computer and try and come up with a hypothesis of what they think the outcome is. But that's pointless, because remember, we want everyone on the same boat. We want everyone making this journey to solution land with us. So this is an example from Lean UX that I think a lot of you here might have read. So we believe that by doing something for these users so that this happens, and we will know we are right when we see this change. And then you're ready to do some prototyping. Some rapid prototyping. In solution land, your focus is on low cost validation. You want to validate your hypothesis, but do it at the minimum cost possible. Because at this point, you want to go wide. You want to explore a lot of solutions. You don't want to get locked down in one. You want to find as many possibilities of routes to take. You want to split up your big troop into little search parties. Go find the greenest of pastures. And look at your experience design. So like in problem space, you look at concepts, information architecture, interaction design. You look at the visual design. And that's where your prototypes start to come to life. And then this one. This point of contention, the debates everyone's had. What is an MVP? It's very tempting to look at a prototype, to try and break it down and say, let's do the smallest thing possible. Let's do whatever helps us ship fast. So we go for that bottom, the smallest functional thing we can do that seems to meet our objective. But that's what we need. We need a good cross-section that looks at our experience as an entity and not just as a function. So what do we learn? Go wide before you go deep. On solution land, you go wide before you go deep. Explore as much as you can before you hunker down, before you set up camp in one place. And then there is eternal discovery. So before you even chart your course into understanding a problem, you need to know what the problems are. So at Receibank, what we do, we run two parallel tracks. So we have eternal discovery, which is a shared responsibility. It's not just on UX researchers, but product managers, to the product team, the larger business, marketing, sales. Everyone is engaged in this. We try to understand the macro trends, the lives of users, how they use our product, but how they go about doing their daily jobs. Accounting is a hard field. When I joined Receibank a few months ago, I didn't know very much about bookkeeping. But we spend a lot of time learning. Internally, we share insights into how things work, how business costs are viewed, how accountants care about the accuracy of tax numbers. And we know this because we all learn about it as part of our coming on board. We learn about the industry we're in. We learn about the business of accounting. We also get involved in activities. and macro trends that are relevant to these guys, whether it's making tax digital or open banking. We try and empathize with the things that the people in our space care about. So that brings us to a third lesson. In eternal discovery, when you're in this space where you're constantly exploring problems, it's important to make frequent excursions. Don't get stuck there. Take your first step. Dip your toes in. Because you can't stay here forever and observe all of the problems and have no means of doing anything about it. So dip your toes in. Make frequent excursions. Go out. And it's okay to come back and say that this problem is not worth solving. Know that you can do that. But start. So, to conclude, visualize, synthesize, and revise problems. Go wide before you go deep in solution space. And finally, make frequent excursions when you're in eternal discovery mode. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Divya. So guys, next up, we have the headline talk. It is the final talk of today. So